get started with our committee of the whole meeting on April 1st. Just in case there are issues with, get it, that was an April Fool's joke. I'm sure Tyler appreciated that in the back, thinking there was something going on with the sound.
He had a thumbs up and it seemed totally not sarcastic when he did that.
Couldn't resist.
Has a different finger up now, it's weird.
Right, doesn't look like a thumb. All right. Let's see. Community survey. I don't think there really isn't much more to add on that as far as early results. I downloaded the data to give to Jeff. We had that discussion coming from the copier. So that will be filtered and sent and checked off of the list. And I did not bring the printed edits, but the edits for the flyers. And then there will be a letter on official, I guess we'll call it official, on city letterhead to accompany the one with the schools. And then I will likely have another letter to accompany the digital email and attachment that is sent to the chamber, and then a printed copy for those to deliver to any of the businesses locally, whether they are chamber members or not. With Creamy Whip open, we could slap that right inside so we don't have to worry about it disappearing. People can scan it while they're deciding if they want a turtle sundae, a brownie sundae, or
All of them.
do the turtle brownie sundae, which I highly recommend. All right. Any question, further discussion on either of the community survey items? Yes.
Just as a matter of clarity, I feel like I hear the term kind of like early results. So at this point, would we consider it having been sort of like soft launched, and the big launch is coming, or has there been a big launch and we're planning a relaunch?
We had, I guess we would call that a big launch, kind of.
It's sort of going in
digital
stages.
launch.
So we did the one that was sort of a general, and then Mr. Gears is fine-tuned to do a separate QR code for the schools, for the chamber.
Got it.
Two for the chamber,
Okay.
one for the employees and one for the,
And I spoke with Superintendent Mary Ronan the other day, and she was happy to distribute it and just needs it sent over. So I think that once we get it, we can start spreading it out. But we had over 600 from just the initial, which was on the city Facebook page, the city website. We put it in a few businesses, like I put it in the library, to the cidery, some restaurants, just sort of, it was not intended to be the big, but it was an initial.
because we're still going to hit the parks. We'll have laminated code or laminated flyer for parks.
Do we have an ETA on that one? Sorry.
Maybe it can go out this month. Yes.
We're doing it a cheaper way rather than
Correct.
getting it made like yard signs. So
Correct.
it's a little slower.
All right. Anything else with regard to community survey? So we do, I guess, with the different QR codes, it does get identified. So when looking at the results, we can see kind of how they access the survey. So if it was through the school, if it was through the chamber, if it was a park. And then I'll probably put the same QR code for community posting areas as the parks. So like if we were to do Kroger or, I don't know, what other areas, I guess maybe the library, or you said there's already one in the library.
I did take one to the
Okay.
library.
All right. I would, some of those I would probably use the same code as parks, as opposed to chamber businesses. All right. New council orientation.
I am behind schedule, and that's why I just sent you all the outline. We can revisit this next one. We have until the election, so I feel okay with the current timeline.
I just volunteered to write some of the stuff. I have started writing some of the things just as they came to mind.
Amazing.
So I would rather write that than the paper that I need to write for my actual job. So
this is how you can
this is how I can productively
procrastinate.
procrastinate.
And I love that for you. Yeah. I just said that to everyone. Revisit the next one.
All right. Master plan for the city, or well, were there any other items under new council orientation? All right. Master plan for the city. I know this is something obviously is more or less linked to the community survey. What I will also throw out there, based on some of the discussion that took place at the Financial Planning and Supervision Commission meeting, is looking at a 10-year plan. I know that the FRP, because we are in fiscal emergency, they do have that requirement for 5 years. My opinion, and I believe Anna Mary with the State Auditor's Office also expressed her preference in some of the planning tools is to look out 10 years.
And I think that's kind of more standard for master plans as well. Like a 5-year plan is more of a tactics versus strategy, I guess. So you have like a 5-year plan that's
Right.
tactical, day-to-day stuff that you can kind of forecast out very specific things, like a specific ambulance, and then the 10-year plan's like, okay, here's where we want to be in 10 years.
Right.
Not specifically, we need this dump truck.
Although when it comes to like fire apparatus,
Yeah.
those are so expensive that we need to be looking at 10 years.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but I mean, a dump truck is way more affordable than a pump truck or
Yes.
a ladder truck.
It's my understanding that McCabe does a really amazing job
Yeah.
of doing that. Because I remember he's been talking about the truck since I've been on council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one that is, it's only $100,000 more than when they first started talking about it.
All right, anything else as far as master plan? Thoughts, ideas? All right.
Well, maybe I do kind of want to go back. When we're talking about master plan, I guess I'm sort of curious how much is like council's master plan versus the city's master plan? And some of those might be the same and some of them might be different. You know, like what do we have as a plan for ourselves versus what is the city's goals and how can we help facilitate those goals? So I guess that's part of my question is when we're talking about the master plan, What exactly are we meaning by that? And then just a piece of information, I was talking to Mr. Powers the other day, and he had a really cool conversation with someone regarding a master plan concept that he was going to get more information on. So, I mean, ideally, as the city is working on a master plan, if the city is, when I say the city administration,
Right.
the mayor, if we could dovetail that, I think that would be fantastic. But I also am aware that I think that we're going to come up with some of our own priorities that we see as we're going through the data from the survey, as well as just our own lived experience, being on council and seeing where some of the challenges are.
Right. Well, and I think there are some items that we as council can pull out of that FRP that can also fall into that 10-year master plan, because there are things that we'll be able to see, knowing that council will be the ones to vote on the legislation to likely fund some of those projects, that at least for 5 years out, have the option to include that in the master plan, as we know those are going to be forthcoming.
Emily with like a sand volleyball court. Priority.
Top priority, man.
Yes. And I believe in the capital improvement portion of the FRP, there is $1.25 million allocated each year for streets.
Yes.
And noting that that 1.25 million does not include any funds that we would receive from county, state, or federal government in the form of matching grants. That 1.25 million is the money that is allocated that the city of Norwood would actually pay.
Yeah.
So that 1.25 million could actually be a greater number as far as the scope of the projects, but the financial responsibility or obligation on behalf of the city that has been allocated through the FRP is at 1.25 million per year.
The idea of physical player, following up with what you guys just said. On page 2 of the financial recovery plan, it says on or before September 15th of each year, all department heads and other branches of the government shall submit their departmental budgets to the finance committee, city auditor, and the mayor. Later it says November 1st each year, the finance committee, city auditor, and mayor shall submit to the city council fund appropriations, blah, blah, blah. December 1st is a deadline that includes city council. Why aren't we doing any of those things?
We do.
I'm on the finance committee and I've never seen any of that.
I feel like McCabe has brought his budget before us, right?
In his annual presentation.
I think that there's not a clear process of like, okay, this is the day that we're going to talk about the budget with just the finance committee. At least not, that hasn't been the case for when I've been on finance committee. So it would be good to establish some date of like, hey, get us something at this date to match up with what is necessary in the FRP. I know that we get kind of piecemeal through the fire department, the police department, kind of what their budget prospects are or what they will need in the future, and the rec department and others as well. But I think it would be good to have the finance committee know more sooner.
I mean, by law,
Yes.
we're supposed to.
And by good, I mean,
This is a legal binding
yeah.
document.
And by good, I mean legally binding. And
Right.
that is also good.
I don't understand why we were given the budget on our desks on Tuesday night before the council meeting, when this says it's supposed to be worked through city council as early as September 1st of each year.
Yeah. I wonder if that is somewhat related to the financial recovery plan that we're on, but if that's in the document, like, I mean, you talked about that last year too. So
But we got that. We got a previous version of that. Was it in September?
did we?
I mean, that's not the first.
When did you see this before?
You're just to confirm, you're talking about budgets. You're not talking about the FRP.
Correct.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the FRP.
But I mean, in the FRP, it's all of these numbers we should be looking at September 1st, November 1st.
I think that we should probably check and see, but I don't
I
remember
didn't get them.
seeing budgets for every department. I will allow that September feels like about 2 years ago now, but my memory isn't failing that badly, I don't think. So, but we can check, and I think that we should make it clear to the administration that this year we need to see that. It doesn't have to be final. I mean, that's the thing. Budgets change all the time. Totally understandable, but having a ballpark of what departments want and need would be helpful to me as I look at the FRP later on in, well, hopefully we never have to see an FRP again, but if we do, in March, it'd be good to have some information earlier.
There are
Even if it's
things-
just like broad strokes.
There are things that I think we could contribute to that process. That is our duty to contribute to that process, that we've been cut out on, or we've just not made the priority ourselves, or both. I mean, for instance, I just talked to one of our department heads whenever we got this, and one of the issues is that there are two different people who pull out of the same pots of money. And so that's something that, you know, can lead to big problems if we need to, you know, use that money and it's already been used accidentally.
Right.
I would recommend at the next council meeting, when we have the administration reports, posing that question to both the mayor and the auditor, because they, from an administrative perspective, I would like to think that the mayor's office is aware of the, at least navigating through the budgets with the department heads. And from the financial perspective, I would like to think that Mr. Miracle would also have to be included at some point, so that there is some awareness there, looking at the numbers.
I think that with the new deputy auditor, that'll be, her help would be pretty immense in that. So it might be good to just set up a meeting with Ken, like one-on-one, and just see what his feeling is about that, or what he thinks would be what they would be able to deliver in September, so that we can have an idea.
Yeah, and just even on that, I had a chance to talk to the deputy auditor the other day, and she had just come back from a training over the weekend and indicated that that there's some activity that basically has to happen around July 1st, as far as reconciling the first 6 months, projecting the back 6 months, and then making a preliminary 2026 budget. And as we look at this page 2 for the format for appropriations, it would really almost be like step like pre-A. And so it would definitely be interesting to talk more with her about that, because she had a certain set of expectations about the role of council in that versus what role she could play, what role we could ask her to play, things like that. But I think just to, like, I guess zoom out a little more broadly, I'm sorry if this is a new guy question, but, you know, is there a, let's say, like, standing annual calendar for, like, key dates, in the sense of, we generally know that by September 1st this is due, by October 1st this is due, so on and so forth, and then that would allow us to proactively call in, refer out different tasks to kind of help keep on schedule.
Not that council has.
I know that Mr. Miracle was working on, that was one of the things he was working on when he moved into the role as auditor, to avoid kind of that last minute, hey, we need this approved because we need to send it down to the county in 3 weeks. And I know that he had mentioned that in the past. As far as those types of deadlines, I think his office has a running list of those items, especially those that involves some of the high ticket items and the importance for the city to receive funds, and making sure that, we have at least I would say 2 meetings scheduled prior to those in the event we don't have enough to suspend the rules and have all 3 readings at a certain meeting and avoid the special meeting scenario.
Just want to point out here on page 3, number D, on or before December 1st, City Council shall complete its budget hearings on the city's estimates. I mean, these
Yeah,
are-
we've never done that, for sure. That is something that now, I mean, as current finance chair committee, I can put in my calendar a month in advance to remind myself, and if someone else decides that they want to be finance chair, they should do the same.
We'll
We'll talk about that
in a minute.
Yeah.
So the first date is on or before September 15th of each year, all department heads and other branches, blah, 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 to submit their budgets to the finance committee, city auditor and mayor. So I guess it would be on the finance chair
Yes,
to
Follow
send an
up.
email to all the department heads and
yes.
I feel like it might be beneficial for the finance committee to come through this a bit in terms of this section of it, away from the numbers and more in the expectations.
yeah.
Agree.
I have like very little input because I'm not on the finance committee. But
I agree
y'all
with
might
that.
Come through that a little more. Finance meeting.
It's just, I think, imperative, because I don't know if you guys didn't see the Financial Planning Commission, this is not approved. We did our job, so we're not penalized, but we got to go through all this whole process again because it was done and she didn't like some of the things that were required and didn't make it or whatever.
Yeah.
Joe got to sit through that lovely meeting.
I would encourage you, if you haven't watched it, to watch it. It's a good it's a good meeting to watch since it involves a lot of people that we don't normally talk to, like Anna Mary and other folks from the state. I had hoped to attend it in person, but alas, I have to work during the day. And I had a meeting I could not get out of.
Yeah, so I was going to bring that up under Q&A, but since
Sorry about that.
we've opened that up. Yeah, council did meet all of the necessary obligations as far as passing that FRP. Anna Mary with the state auditor's office did note that there were some items missing. So the streets and highway funds, those were not included in the report. And there were several other recommendations or questions that she had in 16 pages worth of questions that she sent on to the mayor and I believe the auditor for some additional questions or clarification. Not all of those were answered, and I believe there was a percentage somewhere in the beginning that also needed to be changed. So that was a 5 to I think 6.5%. So yeah, the way that will work, we do have another meeting scheduled. Put it on my phone so I wouldn't forget. I believe it's the 23rd. We have council meeting on the 8th and the 14th. They're meeting the 23rd with the assumption or expectation that council could potentially have the updated version of the FRP at the April 22nd meeting. And then it would go back to the Financial Planning and Supervision Commission once council has approved it, for them to approve it.
When are they planning on providing that to us?
That is not necessarily a quick process. So based on comments made at that meeting, Ms. Thomas with the Auditor of State's office was assuming that this would be completed at the meeting last week. Or no, that was, feels like last week. That was yesterday. It was yesterday. So she had other items that were prioritized, and she does have individuals from her office who will be working on this. But with some of the information and reviewing the data that is provided, the information that is shared, for her to review it and validate that before it then comes back for approval. So I think the goal was to have it obviously before the meeting on the 22nd, but I cannot speak to the timeline as to when it will actually be presented to council to review.
So ideally, at least from my perspective, it would be great to have it in the packet on Friday.
Agreed.
Because then you have the weekend. Earlier would be better, of course, but the Friday would be kind of more typical what we usually get for other stuff. So.
Right. I mean, if it is not ready, the Financial Planning and Supervision Commission, we still have to meet anyway to approve some other items. So even if the FRP isn't ready by that meeting, that commission will still meet to approve other items, and then would just schedule, I guess we would schedule a special meeting whenever that is, if it's presented after the 22nd date, so that we can get approval.
Or if it's ready but doesn't pass at the 22nd.
Correct. Questions? Any further questions or comments on master plan or FRP? Because I know we kind of dove into that one. All right. Council committee assignments.
Yay. So we've got a new person, John.
Yes.
It's you, by the way. You're the new one. Like I said during the finance meeting, I just wanted to open it up to Mr. Gerton, Mr. Moore, if either of you would be interested in being the finance chair. I'm happy to continue doing it. But since I already chair a committee, I figured it might be a good way for one of you to do that instead. But it is up to you, ultimately. I will not step down without someone there to be the actual president or chair. So I didn't know if either of you had any thoughts.
Is something you're interested in?
At this time, I'm not interested in being the chair, but I'm happy to serve. But given circumstances, I feel like more time would be good before leading it.
And I mean, I was kind of hoping John would say yes. But in the absence of it, I mean, it's something I can do.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to, I don't, what is the formal process by which that changing who is chair and who is on
So
committees?
what I will do, because the committee membership is not in the standing rules of council, so that does not have to go.
And Jeff, you are not currently chairing a committee,
Any
correct?
committee,
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm kind of making edits onto our sheet from this year. I'll type it up with the edits, and those can be submitted under new business, or unfinished business, to approve. And we would just need a motion, a second, and then majority approval. So to confirm, Mr. Garten, we will have you as Chair of Finance. And then Mr. Moore, the other committees that Mrs. Winterbauer was on, was infrastructure, streets, park, recreation, and public places, and housing, health, environment, and public safety. You're good with those? All right.
And for the finance committee, our standing meeting right now is before council the fourth, the fourth Tuesday of the month at 6:30. And you can schedule others or change that however you please. And what Mrs. Winterbauer was doing was meeting with Mr. Miracle prior to the finance committee meeting, just to kind of dive deeper into stuff, get a better understanding of the finances of the city. So you're welcome to do that too. I still want to learn more, so I will probably just try to schedule something with Mr. Miracle regardless. But I just wanted to let you know that's what Candace was doing,
Yeah, thank you.
because it is like very important committee. It's the entire budget of the city, and I don't know about you, but I've never run a city before, so.
That's why I was hoping John would say yes.
So I think just getting more insight from Mr. Miracle and Mrs. Yeager is a good thing, as well as the other folks in the auditor's department too. And Mr. Bronzel, of course, is a great asset as well, as you know. So yeah, I appreciate you stepping up and relieving me of this duty.
So if it goes through on the next week, then I'll start chairing the second week of the second meeting of the month.
Correct. So assuming that you just have the regular meeting, you would be the chair of that April Finance Committee meeting. So until then, I guess I still am, but if we're not meeting, it doesn't really matter. I will still do the committee report for last week and submit it to Joe for next week's thing. So my final act of the very, very short-lived finance chair.
All right. Any other changes or shufflings on committee assignments? So we cannot change the number of members on committee because those, well, not with this piece of paper, because the committee member numbers are within the standing rules of council. What is not in the standing rules of council are the committee assignments. So we can switch those around. And that's just a simple majority vote motion to approve the changes, second, and then majority vote on those. All right. Anything else under committee assignments? Just a reminder, as far as those chairing committees, to send your information to Angela prior to the meeting for the agenda. And then I would say plugging if it is not a standing meeting, a reminder of the date, the time, and the agenda item, so that she can go ahead and communicate that out. And if you need any of the blank committee reports, if you are handwriting them versus typing them up, if there are not any in your mailbox, then we'll update we'll have all the forms updated. So that the proper signature slots are on there, and we should be good to go.
The housing one and infrastructure one, are there dates set right now for either of those?
Not for housing.
Okay.
There's not a standing date for either of those currently.
I think DEI, Finance, and Committee of the Whole are the only
Yes.
ones that have standing meeting dates and times. But there is nothing that stops anyone from, you want to create a standing meeting date and time, There's nothing stopping that from happening.
And just procedurally, can one be scheduled in a vacuum, or does one have to come about as a result of putting something into committee during new business at the main council meetings?
I think typically there's an agenda, there's at least one agenda item to discuss, to meet. Otherwise, there's nothing to report out from the committee.
So the chair can call them at their discretion without having to refer something to it in new
Correct.
business?
Yes.
Okay.
And then it also works the same with the meeting announcements. The meeting announcements do not have to formally be made at a council meeting. Those can be scheduled outside of a council meeting because we do follow the sunshine laws and all of our meetings, committee meetings, as well as council meetings, be it regular or scheduled, are sent out electronically and posted.
The reason why we often schedule meetings during council or committee of the whole meetings is because you can't have a group chat with that many people in it, and so it is less labor and time intensive to schedule when you're all sitting in a room on camera than it is to text each person individually or call each person individually.
Yes.
So you don't have to do it that way. It is just usually more convenient.
Yep, and if someone on one of the committees wants to like do a standing committee meeting, if they think that'd be useful, that's something they can talk about during council too. For infrastructure and public places, et cetera, we haven't had a standing committee meeting. It's just kind of been when needed. Sometimes it's because of something in council, or sometimes it's just because residents have been talking about something with a park or something with streets, and we want to try to get people together to talk about it in a more informal setting.
And I think the other reason with finance and committee of the whole having standing committee meetings is those typically have items in committee.
Yes.
We're never not discussing finances.
ABF, always be financing.
We've never not had questions to ask during committee of the whole.
Right.
With regard to infrastructure, just while we're on the topic, is there a like publicly available list of all the ones that are slated to be done in this calendar year or forever, like for however far into the future they're scheduled to be done?
Roads.
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
There was a presentation that Mrs. Franzen did maybe a year ago.
It was a year ago.
Where she did do a presentation and that information was provided. I would say that that list is probably outdated now. And one of the things I'd like to look at, and this is, I don't know, really off topic, but we need to have that list redone, another update by the engineering firm, I believe.
And that was discussed in the Financial Planning and Supervision Commission meeting. That was vaguely touched on about with that 1.25 million that's allocated, having the new street survey and identifying which streets need the full grinding down and resurfacing versus which ones would suffice with some ongoing maintenance or general maintenance.
I think part of the concern, I asked about this right when I started on council, and part of the concern then was if we have like a list on the website or something, if we get a bad storm and one street is impacted much more severely than another, then suddenly that list is no longer valid. It's like such a living, working, changing thing that every time we get a bad snowstorm, or every time there's salt, or every time there's construction, or if there's a pipe burst, like it changes so frequently that I think the concern was if we have that document out available to the public, people are going to see it and think, oh, great, my street is in 3 streets from now. And if I see any street getting paved, it's not the 2 streets ahead of me, I'm going to be furious. And we don't want people to be upset about that, but we also want to be as honest and transparent as possible. But just the need is changing.
And additionally, we don't always choose the streets because,
And
one of the
state has a lot
things.
to do with it.
Yeah, we send, and the way Mr. Zimmerman tends to do it is when he finds a grant, and the state always has has funding available for different things. And so he will pick a street, and he's pretty focused on making sure it's one from each ward, and he submits them, and then the state will make that decision. And sometimes the state's decision would be different than, say, mine as a not engineer, because I was really surprised when they were doing Regent. And I thought, of all the streets, Regent was just sort of odd to me, but it met their criteria, and we got a lot of funding for it. And then we were able to not take all of the 2 point, because I think that street, and don't quote me, but I think it was like 1.3 million. I mean, it was just huge amount. So that's one street. And that was a full gut job with water lines and that sort of thing. So to say, here's a list of the streets and we go down one at a time, that's simply not what the process is. And then we have the failed streets, but we also have, and actually I sent this over to Mr. Powers, and I'd love to circle back. There's a pilot paving program, isn't that you?
Yeah, you
too?
said that to me.
Pilot paving program through OKI that's just for paving. So the streets that just need a good pave, that don't need the
Yeah.
the full thing. But
sorry.
just sorry, one more that last little thing is ideally what we want to do with that 2 point whatever million, it's like crazy numbers, is to use that really wisely and have that go towards like the 20%. So the state will say, we'll pay for 80, but the local ask has to be 20%. And the more the local municipality puts in, the better your proposal looks. And so that's how we don't pay. Otherwise, literally, we'd be paving one street a year.
And it wouldn't necessarily be an entire street either. It may
Right.
only be
A
a portion of.
Yeah.
So that's why, I mean, if you want to go back and watch the presentation Mrs. Franzen did, I highly recommend it, because it's a really interesting process, the way streets happen, and it's not logical to, say, my brain. It's all through a whole system.
I will send you what I have from 2021 street survey that was done, because I have that document in my email. And I would also say, reaching out to Clint and asking him about what the immediate plans are would be helpful, just to, if people ask, which they will, about what streets are going to be paved next, he will have a sense of what we are likely to get funding for in the coming years. I know that right now, we have, as council, approved funding for South Jefferson and for Rolston. But the timeline for when that actually gets started, I think the start date for asking for bids for South Jefferson was like March 1st. So I don't know how long or how short of a process that will be. But yes, to go back and answer your question more simply, I do want to get that information out. And I've worked on it for a while, and I did some presentations, and I want to keep trying to work on it. So any ideas you have would be well received by me.
And I think another good resource to use for that, to kind of generate some of those questions for the administration, is looking in the FRP in years that are forecasted out, where they have anywhere from $80,000 to $600,000 allocated, to kind of identify what that is exactly.
Yeah.
Because you'll see those numbers that kind of stick out in the plan, where it's pretty much zeroed out all the other years, and then you're going to see that one that drops in there with a rather significant number to kind of follow up with that question and ask, as far as infrastructure, whether it's streets, whether it is any of our buildings, any of the parks, kind of what the plan or what the goal is with that.
Yeah.
Because the funds have obviously been approved within that plan. So as far as infrastructure, there is some plan to upgrade or replace something within there. Let's see. Anything else under council committee assignments or general questions? All right. I know that we had, the other agenda item on here was future ad hoc meetings with Norwood City Schools. And I am not sure if that is an item that we should discuss now, given their special meeting last night, or if we should wait to get advice from Mr. Moore on whether or not we should even be discussing that.
I had a question about, would it be okay to discuss the previous meeting that has already happened? Or is that still a question for Mr. Moore?
I would like to defer to the law director on that one, because I'm not sure what the scope is of any potential or pending litigation.
I know we do have a school member in the audience. Would it be appropriate to let that person speak, or is that also just something that we should maybe not talk about this at all in any capacity? I don't know.
I would assume she could say,
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you can say whatever.
I think she could say whatever she wants.
Yeah, so
No leading questions. Talk
I guess since you're here, I didn't know if there's anything that you wanted to say about this item, even if we can't respond necessarily, or
Is the
just
item
things, ad hoc committee.
you meeting with schools, or is the item our meeting last night?
The item that is on our agenda would be the thing that was put into committee, which is the future ad hoc meetings with Norwood City Schools.
I think you better have some meetings.
I think those will probably be canceled, given.
I think, yeah, I guess your lawyers will have to have
I have a
meetings.
feeling they'll tell us not to have those.
Yeah.
I
The
think
lawyers
the
will
item
have
that
to
was
have
put
meetings.
into was like in future having meetings.
Mike.
Was in future having meetings regarding like any CRAs that were to come. I don't think that this was, no.
I don't.
No, my understanding is that these would be ongoing discussions.
Yeah, and I'll speak to it because I think it was my, the idea was just to have an ongoing two council, two school board, get together, talk about priorities of each party, kind of key budget things for each party, any particular tax abatements for each party. That was the spirit in which it was proposed, just to try to proactively have ongoing communication. But yeah, if that is off the table for some period of time, then I don't.
Hopefully it'll be quickly, and then I think it should be on the table. We definitely need to do that. And there definitely needs to be more education about CRAs and TIFs and all that good stuff.
Post litigation, I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, post.
And I will say,
Definitely not now.
I will
And
say-
hopefully it's quickly.
Yep. I will say in general that more communication is better than less.
Yes.
I think
I'm
so
the
also.
vaguest person that I've ever been. I'm vaguing out. So, because I don't want to incur Mr. Moore's wrath or the wrath of the city
which Mr. Moore?
either.
So Alice, does the letter that you sent in the last, that the board sent in the last committee meeting, does that still stand as priorities for the school?
Yes,
Okay.
I think so. Oh, gosh. I think so. The requests.
Yeah. The
We
letter
need
that-
these things done. Yes.
The letters, requests, irrespective.
Yeah, I don't know what else to,
I hope I'm
Ask
not
her something about that.
misspeaking, but I think so, yes.
Yes.
I think it would be wise to move to the next agenda item.
Yep.
All right, then we'll move on to Q&A. Anything else?
I would just like to apologize for my tardiness. I was cat sitting and lost track of time. For a fellow Norwood resident, by the way. So I was serving the community in a different capacity.
That's all right. Look, you were not going to blame the posted meeting time on this one.
That's true. We can't
I
this
know.
I put in an extra hour and a half last week, so I apologize.
Less of a question, more of a comment, the classic thing. I just wanted to say thanks to Mr. Moore and Mr. Gurdon for bringing up all this budget issue stuff. It's definitely something that, even though I'm finance chair, Candace did a lot of that kind of work behind the scenes. So in trying to get caught up, it was good to have other people talking about things that I wasn't able to really think of in the moment. So I'm also glad that we got the FRP passed, even though it was not approved because, well,
We had to.
we had to.
We had to.
And I'm glad that this building was able to be there, so, because then I didn't have to drive half an hour back to pass something on Saturday and then drive half an hour back to my conference that I was attending all day on Saturday, which I was willing to do, but I would have had a baby with me.
If there are any further items that you may have as far as questions or clarification on the FRP, since council will have to pass an improvement of it, the next version of it, I would strongly recommend sending those questions on to the administration and/or Mr. Miracle for that clarification as they're putting together the next iteration.
And just for what it's worth, I did have a chance to talk to Ms. Yeager about the discrepancies that I found and just call those out, circle them in more detail so that she has them. My intention in how I brought them up at the meeting was to not be gotcha or dwell on them or anything like that, but I do want to make sure those are corrected, and there seemed to be maybe a little bit of confusion about what those were. So she now has those in her possession as well.
Well, to your point and to what you just said as well, we just didn't have any time to review this.
Yep, we did what we could with
Yeah.
the time we had, and I think we did the best job we could have within that time frame. And, with sicknesses and work, it's hard to find the amount of time you might like.
And I will add that this has been an ongoing concern. It is not unique to this
Yeah.
legislative body.
Yes.
I recall being the clerk when we were in the auditorium, and Mr. Thompson had expressed the same concerns, that the information was just kind of provided and council had to adopt it, or it was looking at going and facing, I guess, that penalty of operating on 85% of the budget.
I think Mrs. Winterbauer also brought it up last year. So it's, yeah.
And I will say, looking at the FRP, that the submission to council has always been in that last week of March. So whatever issues there are, it is not unique to this administration either. It is
Correct.
a thing that the city continues to be pretty consistent about for whatever reason.
And I think where it becomes a little more complicated is during the years when the union contracts are up and the timing of when they're approved, because that in turn also impacts the forecast going out an additional 3 years.
And one thing I'll say on that is that, offline since, I guess Friday night it was, I heard a little more detail about sort of that the city administration was waiting to get it back from the state or some other, you know what I mean? And so I guess it is to say that the ball wasn't entirely in their court with the timing. They were dependent in some ways on other folks to review it and send it back, and then it came to us. So just want to acknowledge that.
And then anything else under Q&A? Yes, sir.
Do we have any information on the future clerk? Or is that just going to be dropped on us at a meeting? Or is that your duty?
It technically is. It is not, because I do not appoint the clerk. Council majority appoints the clerk. But yes, I have been in discussions with an individual to assume the clerk role, and then that will be pending the approval of council.
Can we openly talk about it or not?
I mean, you can. That's absolutely, it is.
I've
You all are the ones voting on it.
I've reached out to Jason Provins, and he's had some conversations, with Mr. Gears. He does bring some thoughtful, what I think is going to be really interesting is we do need to make a lot of changes. And what's kind of crazy, just when I think about the last 3 years that I've been here, and when we first kind of jumped on, it was sort of like the ship was rocky. It was a little, it's a very different temperature in the room than it was a couple years ago. And I think now that there's a greater calm, we can see some of the, when you're in emergency, you're just trying to stop the bleeding. And I think we are moving out of that space where it's like, okay, wait a minute, why are these processes like this? Whereas 2 years ago, it was just keep the ship moving, however that metaphor goes. So I know in my conversations with Mr. Province, he has some ideas that would bring some added professionalism to the position. And part of it I don't like because it has greater accountability on me getting my stuff in on time. But I also respect that because I think that is helpful. So that's who I've given a couple names to Mr. Gears. I think Mr. Province is a really good option. One of the things that Joe said is it's unusual to do this midstream. Usually it's at the election and you're getting all
January 1st appointment.
yeah.
typically.
So this is unusual that this is happening. And if I don't know if you guys know, Natalie's husband is a doctor and they're moving away. So it was and so we knew this was coming a little bit. But do we want to have a conversation about some of the suggestions that Mr. Province has about what he would like to see to help the process? Mr. Province, do you feel prepared to say a word or two?
Susan, thanks for the endorsement. So a little bit on my background. I run meetings. That's what I do for a living. I've done it for the federal government too long. So some of the suggestions that I'm seeing is the problems you guys just discussed, not having enough time to review things not necessarily being turned in on time. So the way I see the clerk position is really being the liaison between council and administration are the things you guys consider. With that, I firmly believe in responsibility. So the biggest one that I see is there's this nice little window on Fridays where administration can get their reports in, and then it's due to you all as a packet. I work full-time job on Fridays. I will be freaking out or taking leave on Fridays if you all appoint me. So pushing that timeline for packets due, I would almost say a week. Like that would be my sweet spot for you. So administrative reports, ordinances, things considered for council would come in the Tuesday before. I would even stay up late for you all and send it to you Tuesday night. So then you'd have a full week. You'd have the weekend to chew on this stuff, ask the questions you need. If there was some in-between meetings that you needed to have, you could have them, and then the packets would be full. Now, of course, hair on fire, right? What do we do if we have things that happen in between? That's where you all get to consider to adjust or change the agenda for that day. It also gives you the no power of like, no, we'll take that one next meeting. So it gives you the option of saying, yes, we're going to review this stuff, or no, we're not. And I think it would really help make me feel better as clerk, making sure you all had things to be successful. So,
Can I say something about Mr. Province? When I was told that Natalie was going to be resigning, he was the first person that I thought of. And then I said, let me sit on that for a while. And then he reached out to me, and I thought, oh my God, I already have this thought. This is phenomenal. And I agree that I feel like I feel like you're asking questions that I never thought to ask. Like it never occurred to me that we could get the packet before Friday. And what I'll say about that, and maybe I don't know, but I feel like it's the right questions to ask. What I will say about that is we get the packet Friday. People don't work on the weekends. So we have the weekend, but if we need to meet with someone about something that's in the packet, we have Monday. And I'm off work Monday, which is great, but most people are not off work Mondays. So having like additional business days in between receiving the packet would be such a relief and make me feel like a lot less of a nuisance about can we meet immediately, as in today as I'm sending this email. I don't love for things to be last minute despite all appearances. And that would be like an absolute game changer in terms of the time that we could spend on things.
Even Thursday would be yeah, even just one day.
Even one day.
Yeah.
I would be happy with any additional days.
I'm not calling people on my lunch break on Monday. It's usually what I do if I'm having a meltdown.
I'm just panicking all Monday.
Yeah, and I do try to give the packet a once over on Saturday, but having Friday as an actual day of work to properly go over it would make a huge difference for my state of mind as well. Especially if, sometimes Monday is a holiday too. That's the other thing.
Yes.
If it's Memorial Day or what have you, then we'd have zero time of business days to talk to people. And I don't want to bother Noah on Sunday afternoon.
And I have.
Yeah. I don't want to. I don't will.
Yeah, and I will say, this is very selfish, but I like having an actual day off work. Having a full-time job and also counsel and just not having any days off work is tough.
Have you had an opportunity to talk with administration about the feasibility of, and I realize that's not
So-
long since we talked last.
No, great question. So I do have a meeting set up with Noah on Wednesday. We're going to do a phone call. I did reach out to Mayor Snyder just to see what the impact would be on him. Haven't heard back, so he's probably busy.
The law department would probably be good too, since they draft. Yeah.
Okay.
Are they on the list?
Yes.
Since they're the ones I email and say, will you make this?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Jim Gary.
Yeah.
And so just to clarify for my brain, so the secretary to the clerk is the person who puts the packet together?
Correct.
Correct. So for the clerk, you would collect the stuff and give it to her, or is she giving it directly from the administration?
Typically, all of the ordinances, resolutions, communications, everything would go to her because
Okay.
she's here. She's
Right,
the
I know she is
day-to-day.
also an actual employee, so
Right.
that's what I thought, but I wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that,
Sorry about the confusion. So yes, it does go and come from the secretary, but the clerk is technically responsible. And so when I was talking to Susan about this, I thought, okay, what's my responsibility in this? What do I need to freak out about? It's making sure you all receive the things in timeliness that your rules state. So right now it says information will be submitted by 10 a.m. on Friday, and then you all receive something by 2 on a Friday. The clerk is responsible for that. The secretary does it, but what if the secretary can't do it? Then the clerk is the one who needs to make sure it gets done.
I'm impressed you've looked into it more than I have. The official responsibilities.
Well, I know that Joe has
I've played secretary to the clerk for
many,
several months.
many times.
yes.
Yes, PTO on Fridays.
Fridays.
To come in and do packets.
I mean, I know, and I can share again, I know for me, it will cause a bit of discomfort in changing those gears, but I think that ultimately it would be for the best for all of us.
Yeah, and I know when I have to submit a committee report, if I don't think of it before Friday, I usually don't think of it at all to let people know that I need to put that on the agenda, for instance. And that's a minor thing, but it's nice to not have to them in the agenda all the time.
I also think in terms of sunshine and agenda publications, if there's an issue that folks care really strongly about, giving them more notice that we're going to be talking about it at a meeting gives them more time to adjust their schedule, gives them more availability to attend and to maybe address council. I think there are going to be growing pains with literally any major change that happens, and that's okay. I think that's just something you have to be prepared for. But I think the gain stands to be worth it, in my opinion. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for inviting.
All right. Any other items under Q&A? Yes, sir.
Sorry, hopefully this is a quick one. Just with respect to Chief McCabe coming in a month ago, 5 weeks ago, and thinking about all the other department heads, Public Works and Recreation. I mean, even I know there's a request right now from Norwood Community Television about, is there or would it make sense to have, some kind of rotation where once a month, once every other month, we ask for a sort of report like Mr. McCabe gave.
That's what we
They,
have
they,
now.
they do.
They do.
The Safety
Okay.
Service Director has I believe it is the last meeting. It isn't every month, but there is a department head who will come and do a presentation
Okay.
to council. Kind of their annual report.
We requested that they do it, and it's been maybe 3-4 months it's been going on.
Got it.
We've heard from the rec, from McCabe.
Darren will be here.
Oh, no, Mr. Hackworth. Oh, and the police chief was here.
We did do
Recreation.
it last year.
Yeah,
We've done it
They-
at least
they
the whole
did it-
time I've been on council.
yeah.
It's a board.
Time flies. Yeah, I think your first term started it because it's been going on my whole term. So thank you for doing that. The term before me.
And Mr. Powers dictates that schedule, is that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, thank you.
And
Well, it sounds like the clerk just dictates that schedule.
One thing that I've been sort of curious about, and I know that Emily chatted about this a few meetings ago, about going to different community council meetings, and I've been to a couple of council meetings, and what's crazy, like, each one is totally different. I mean, each council is a totally different vibe and energy, and committees are different, and the rules are different. And one of the things that Mayor Schneider said, which I really appreciated, was administrative reports is at the end. And so if he has something to say, and again, it's not his meeting, this is our meeting, but he's going to have thoughts and input that is going to be important for us to know. So I'm open to having some conversation of if there's a different, a better way of organizing our order of meeting, or if we, one thing that I think that we've been trying to do more of is talking about, this is the ordinance that's on, and this is what it's about. I think we all try to do that to some degree. I'm wondering if making it more formalized, so we say, this is what, because the clerk will read what the ordinance is, which to most people doesn't mean anything. But if we could then make sure that we say, this is what this is, and then we did that more habitually rather than just sort of occasionally like, oh, I think people would want to know about this, I'll have Noah come up. If we just sort of did it as a habit, I think that might help with communication for folks at home. And I'm also curious about if there's other ways to build in dialogue. For example, with some of the things about, say, the CRA where Mr. John Moore, Keith Moore. Sorry, I'm thinking John Braden and John Moore and right, long day. That he might have an opinion about something, but unless you called him on the phone and said, hey, what's your opinion? He's not going to give it. So, there might be, I'd like for us to consider different ways of pulling out more information.
And that was
Sort of the long story.
that was kind of one of the things that I did. I don't remember what meeting that was. It was the long meeting. Was giving everybody up at this table the opportunity to share their thoughts or opinions on that, and then also identifying, that on peripheral vision behind here is pretty blind. And that's where there's nothing that stops any of the four sitting up here from raising their hand and for any of you to give them the opportunity to speak or request through the chair to ask a question to any of these individuals or request through the chair that they asking if they have any comment on that matter. And I wanted to point that out. And I guess, that could be something to throw in with the new council orientation and some of those little nuances that, although they are here and they are not out in the formal discussion during a council meeting, that their opinion, their thoughts, their experience on the matter can be tapped as a resource. Or if they do have a comment that they would like to add, that any of you can basically request that they answer a question or ask a question. That opportunity is there for all of them. And then also keeping in mind that when there are questions thrown out in the discussion, that it is still a formal meeting. So there's still the raising of the hand for the follow-up. It is not an open dialogue between either anyone at the podium or anyone up here. Just that reminder. Yeah. That's the morning speech.
Yeah, before you gavel us.
Right. It is, again, and that's the one nice thing with committee of the whole, is it is a little more, well, not a little more, it is more informal than the regular council meeting. But I feel like it's getting back into that structured routine of the council meeting where it is easy to just start drilling the follow-up questions or having that open dialogue when I'm going to call out a name because you've started, and I'm not looking or pointing at anybody.
That's at the special meeting. I interrupted. I noticed I did afterwards. And then I also said John, and I was like, well, there's two now. I was like, I really got to get formal and say last name.
Yeah, but you can't say Mr. Moore because we got two of them.
He wasn't there. I should've. Sorry, sometimes urgency takes.
So, Mr. Ears, just to clarify, are you, I think what you're asking is that each individual question merits its own acknowledgement?
Correct. Any statement by members of council require the hand to be raised.
I don't think any of us are not guilty of that at some point.
I said a couple names at the last meeting.
I was really nervous about a Saturday meeting. Okay.
There are, when we're talking about, what is everyone's availability for a committee meeting, I'm not going to sit there and.
Try to
right.
lay down the law, Joe.
There are, I will make exceptions in that regard because I really don't want to call each individual's name when everybody's checking the calendar. And at that point, you can just go with Mrs. Bowling's idea of just sending those individual texts and emails and phone calls to see when everybody's available. But no, with the exception of that portion of the meeting, then for several reasons. Number one, for the purpose of minutes and recordings, it is easily identifiable to who is making the question or the comment or statement. And then, let's see, I know we had the discussion or the clarification by Mr. Moore, by the law director, Mr. Moore, about the difference between the suspending the rules and having all three readings versus declaring an emergency. In most instances, the emergency declaration is already within
We don't need
the
to say
ordinance or the resolution. So we do not have to state that we're and declaring an emergency. And then the suspending the rules, anytime we have more than one reading at a meeting, that does require to suspend the rules to have more than one reading. And in order to suspend the rules, we have to have at least 6 members voting in favor of suspending the rules. And if we do not have 6 members present, we cannot suspend the rules. If we have 6 members present and only 5 vote to suspend the rules, that motion will fail. We do have to have six members voting in favor of suspending the rules and having, whether it's 2 readings or all 3 readings of an ordinance or resolution. For any ordinance or resolution that does have that emergency declaration in it, we do have to have 5 members present voting yes in order to pass that. Other ordinances and resolutions and other council matters, the simple majority of those present works. But for the emergency declaration, we would need those 5. All right. Anything else? Any other questions, clarification? Okay. Then I am going to say we are good to go here. Next council meeting is a week from tonight,
What time?
7:30.
Thank you, sir.
The council meetings, with the exception of special meetings, the regular council meetings, second and fourth Tuesday of the month at 7:30.
So in terms of having a new clerk by that date,
If
do we need to do anything, any formal interview process? My recollection is no. And we just need to
that is
have
a
a
council appointment,
appointment with the voting for it then.
that is correct.
Okay.
I'm happy to fill in.
But
I said I'm happy to fill in. Although that you're not happy for me.
I mean, that is something, all right, hold on. With amendment of the agenda at the next meeting, technically, someone could add the appointment of the clerk of council to follow the amendment of the agenda so that the agenda is amended. And then that next item would be nominating and appointing / approving the new clerk of council. Once council has taken that vote, the new clerk of council can take a seat up here and Ms. Royce can go back to her seat and proceed from there. I mean, it's the same as the January 1st meeting, where the clerk is appointed early on and assumes the role from the duration of the meeting, once the appointment is approved. All right. Any other questions? Mrs. Hoover, that covers what you were looking for?
Yes, sir, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Then we are good to go here. I'll see you all Tuesday night. This meeting is adjourned.